The dropship's engines roared as it pierced through the storm-laden sky, kicking up a cloud of dust and ash upon descent. The planet Sera 9 was a wasteland of war, its surface marred by crumbling structures and rusted remnants of conflict. The Galactic Coalition soldiers had arrived, stepping onto the soil with an air of arrogance, their polished armor reflecting the dim, amber glow of a dying sun. Commander Zelvor strode ahead of his unit, his reptilian features twisting into a sneer as he surveyed the ruins. "This is the great human battleground," he scoffed, his voice a guttural rasp. "A junkyard of a civilization too stubborn to know when it is beaten." Behind him, his soldiers, an assortment of elite alien warriors, chuckled. They had conquered countless worlds, bending them to the Coalition's will. Humanity, to them, was a primitive species that had clung to outdated weapons and foolish defiance. The Coalition's technology had rendered projectile weaponry obsolete centuries ago, their armies wielding energy-based firearms capable of reducing enemies to vapor. Yet, inexplicably, the humans fought on. A single figure stood waiting for them near the edge of the ruins. Lieutenant Rebecca Cade, clad in dark, matte tactical gear, barely looked up as the Coalition soldiers approached. Her stance was relaxed, her expression unreadable. She was tall, lean, and composed, her sharp eyes scanning the group with clinical detachment. Zelvor halted a few paces from her. "You must be the human officer," he said, his tone dripping with amusement. "We were told to coordinate with someone of importance, but instead we are met with this." One of his subordinates, a hulking, insectoid soldier with chitinous plating, clicked his mandibles in mockery. "Perhaps the humans have run out of warriors." Cade barely reacted. She reached into a pouch on her belt, pulled out a data slate, and handed it to the commander. "This contains tactical data on the enemy's movement patterns," she said coolly. "They're dug in along the northeastern ridge. That's where you'll want to focus your advance." Zelvor took the slate, but his attention was elsewhere. His gaze flicked toward the weapon slung across her back, a long, sleek sniper rifle with an elongated barrel and a reinforced stock. His amusement deepened. "Tell me, human, do you still hunt with such relics?" Cade met his gaze evenly. "It gets the job done." "The job?" Zelvor laughed, shaking his head. "You mean killing from a distance? Hiding in shadows like prey, rather than facing your enemy like a warrior." He turned to his soldiers, motioning toward her rifle. "Behold, the mighty weapons of humanity. Pieces of metal that fire small projectiles. It is as if we are fighting museum relics." The soldiers erupted in laughter. One of them, a feline-like warrior with luminous eyes, smirked. "Do those even work against shielding? Perhaps you'd have better luck throwing rocks." Cade remained unfazed. "You'll find out soon enough." Zelvor grinned, enjoying the game. "No, human, I think we shall not. The Coalition does not rely on primitive tools. Our weapons do not require bullets." He tapped the sleek, glowing firearm at his hip. "One shot from this, and your antiquated rifles will seem like toys." Cade exhaled slowly, her patience unwavering. "If you say so." A sharp whistle echoed through the air, and from the surrounding rubble, a handful of human snipers emerged, silent, disciplined figures clad in camouflaged gear. Their presence was unsettling, spectral. They moved with purpose, their rifles slung over their shoulders with quiet reverence. They did not speak, nor did they react to the alien's presence. They simply waited. Zelvor watched them, bemused. "This is your team?" A pack of silent ghosts carrying scrap metal. Cade gave a slight nod. "That scrap metal will be watching your backs." The commander let out another dismissive laugh, turning his attention back to the ruins. "No matter. We will handle this engagement ourselves." He gestured to his troops. "Move out." The squad advanced into the skeletal remains of the city, their boots crunching against debris. The landscape was eerily quiet, the wind whispering through the hollowed husks of buildings. Sera 9 had been a thriving colony once, before war reduced it to this graveyard. The Coalition soldiers were confident, their energy rifles held at ease, their scanning visors sweeping for signs of movement. Their superior technology had made them careless, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with firepower rather than strategy. Cade and her snipers followed at a distance, moving like shadows. She had warned them, told them they were walking into a sniper's playground, but they had ignored her. That was fine. They would learn soon enough. As they wove through the ruins, a voice crackled over the Coalition's communication channels. Motion detected, 200 meters ahead. Possible enemy presence. Zelvor smirked. Finally. Let us see how these humans fight when they do not have walls to cower behind. The Coalition soldiers tightened formation, moving with swift, calculated precision. Their shields hummed to life, shimmering energy barriers forming a protective cocoon around them. They advanced without fear. Then the first shot rang out. A single, deafening crack split the air, cutting through the city's eerie silence. One of Zelvor's soldiers, an avian humanoid with bright orange plumage, jerked violently as a hole appeared clean through his visor. He collapsed instantly, dead before his body hit the ground. The Coalition troops halted. Another shot. A second soldier dropped, his chest armor punctured with surgical precision. Panic rippled through the unit. Their scanners whirred, searching, but the snipers remained unseen. Zelvor's lips curled back in a snarl. Where are they? Silence was the only reply. Then, Cade's voice, smooth and level, crackled over the comms. Still think my weapons are outdated, Commander? Zelvor's jaw tightened. He had underestimated them. These humans, these so-called primitive fighters, were ghosts in the ruins, striking without warning, vanishing before retaliation could even begin. His soldiers adjusted tactics, raising their weapons and firing into the surrounding buildings. Plasma bolts streaked through the air, illuminating the skeletal remains of the structures in bursts of electric blue. Dust and debris cascaded down, but no targets emerged. Another shot rang out. Another soldier fell. Zelvor clenched his fists. Find them. Now. But that was the problem. There was nothing to find. No heat signatures, no movement, no traces of their enemies beyond the bodies they left behind. The game had already begun, and the Coalition soldiers were the prey. The moment the third body hit the ground, the Coalition soldiers abandoned their formation. Their careful, arrogant march turned into a scramble for cover, a frantic rush to find safety in the ruins. But there was none. The towering skeletal remains of Serenine's cityscape offered no true refuge, only the illusion of it. The enemy wasn't in front of them, wasn't advancing like the slow, brutish forces they were used to crushing. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere at once. Commander Zelvor's clawed hand shot up in a signal, his voice a snarl through the comms. Regroup. Shields up, full spectrum scans online. Find the snipers and eliminate them. The soldiers obeyed, huddling in tight formation. Translucent energy shields shimmered around them, bright enough to cast faint reflections on the shattered glass at their feet. Their weapons swept across the ruins, the barrels glowing hot with residual plasma, ready to fire at the first sign of movement. But the only thing that moved was the dust, disturbed by a faint breeze that whispered through broken steel beams and fractured stone. Then the fourth shot came. A single sharp crack, like a thunderclap. One of the shielded soldiers jerked back, his head snapping to the side as a hole punched through his helmet and out the other end. He collapsed, dead before he could even scream. Zelvor's breath hissed through his teeth. How? Their weapons shouldn't be able to pierce our shields, barked an insectoid soldier, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. It's impossible. It's happening, Zelvor growled, scanning the skyline. The shot had come from somewhere high, but the problem was that the city was filled with vantage points, hundreds of potential nests where these human ghosts could be watching. His mind worked furiously. The precision, the timing, the way the shots always found the weakest point in their armor. It wasn't random. This was methodical. Another shot. Another body crumpled to the ground. The surviving soldiers barely held their composure. Some adjusted their visors, switching through scanning modes in desperate attempts to locate heat signatures or movement. But there was nothing. The human snipers had no energy signatures, no biological readings detectable through standard means. It was as if they were part of the ruins themselves. Zelvor slammed his fist against the side of his helmet, opening a direct channel. "Control, we are under heavy fire from human snipers. Requesting aerial reconnaissance immediately." Static. Then, a garbled voice. "Commander, interference, signal, jamming." Zelvor's gut twisted. What? The line cut. A sinking realization set in. The humans had cut them off. They were alone. A cold, unfamiliar emotion slithered into Zelvor's chest. Not anger. Not frustration. Unease. A new voice crackled over their comms. Smooth, unhurried. "I told you," came Cade's voice. "You're in a sniper's playground." Zelvor's grip on his rifle tightened. Enough of this. Switch to suppression fire. Light up every high point. If it's tall enough to shoot from, reduce it to rubble. Plasma fire erupted. Energy bolts screamed through the air, striking rooftops, collapsing weakened structures, turning the upper levels of the ruins into fire-lit wastelands. The sky above them became a storm of smoke and debris. And still, the shots kept coming. One after another, with relentless precision. A soldier flanking Zelvor suddenly pitched forward, a hole drilled clean through the base of his skull. Another's leg snapped sideways as a bullet tore through his knee, sending him toppling to the ground, screaming. The coalition soldiers abandoned their last scraps of arrogance. Fear was setting in now, gnawing at the edges of their discipline. Zelvor saw it in their stances, in the way they pressed their backs to whatever cover they could find, scanning the ruins with wild, darting eyes. "This isn't a battle," one of them muttered. "This is a hunt." Zelvor's glare was sharp enough to cut. Silence. But deep down, he knew it was true. The humans were predators. They struck without warning and vanished before retaliation could even begin. Their bullets cut through armor like paper, and their presence remained unseen, their locations unknowable. Even now, Cade and her team were watching them, unseen eyes behind scopes, fingers hovering over triggers. Zelvor forced his mind into motion. He needed a plan. They had been trained to fight on countless worlds, had adapted to the tactics of dozens of species. This was just another battlefield. It had to be. "Keep moving," he ordered. "We don't stop. We don't stay in one place long enough to be picked apart." The remaining soldiers pushed forward, keeping low, zigzagging through the ruins. Their eyes flickered toward every broken window, every exposed rooftop, waiting for the next shot. They expected an attack from above. That was their mistake. The shot came from ground level. A soldier in the middle of the formation jolted as a bullet found his side, cutting through the gap between his armor plates. Then another. And another. One by one, the squad was thinned, the enemy never revealing themselves, never giving them a target. The hunters were ghosts. Unseen. Untouchable. Zelvor felt his heartbeat hammering against his ribs. He wouldn't admit it, not even to himself, but the feeling was unmistakable. They were losing. The coalition had invaded countless worlds, annihilated armies, bent entire civilizations to their will. And now here, on a broken planet littered with ruins, they were being torn apart by an enemy wielding weapons they had mocked as primitive. Zelvor clenched his jaw so tightly his teeth ached. No. This wouldn't be their end. They had one advantage left. Numbers. However many humans were picking them off, they were still just a handful against what remained of the coalition force. The key was drawing them out, forcing them into open combat. His mind raced. A trap. "We use the hostages," he said suddenly, his voice a cold, hard thing. The remaining soldiers hesitated. "Commander." "We use them," he repeated, eyes burning with fury. "They care about civilians. If we force them out of hiding, we end this." A sickening silence followed. Then a soldier reached for his comm unit. "We still have captives at the forward outpost. We can call for transport, bring them here." Zelvor gave a slow nod. The humans had played their hand well, but they had made a mistake. They still cared. And that would be their downfall. The transmission was sent. Minutes later, the distant hum of approaching transport engines filled the air. Zelvor allowed himself a tight smirk. Let the ghosts stay hidden. Soon, they would have no choice but to show themselves. The low hum of transport engines reverberated through the ruins, growing louder as the coalition's reinforcements closed in. Dust and ash swirled in the air, carried by the vibrations of approaching dropships. Zelvor stood at the center of the wreckage, his reptilian eyes locked on the horizon where dark shapes loomed against the smoke-choked sky. Soon, the hostages would arrive. Soon, the humans would be forced into the open. He turned his gaze toward his remaining soldiers. Their polished armor was smeared with blood and dirt, their formations tighter now, driven by desperation rather than arrogance. They had learned, albeit too late, that this was not a war they could win through sheer technological superiority. This was a hunt, and the coalition was not the predator. But now the game would change. The humans had picked them off like scavengers feasting on the wounded, but they had not faced them in open combat. They had hidden in their shadows, relying on terrain and stealth. Zelvor would strip them of that advantage. He would force them into a battle they could not win. His comm unit crackled to life. Commander, transport ETA 2 minutes. Civilians secured. Zelvor allowed himself a smirk. Then a shot rang out. The soldier nearest to him dropped, his helmet snapping backward as a round punched through the visor. The laughter that had almost bubbled up in Zelvor's throat died instantly. "Snipers!" a soldier barked, diving for cover. Zelvor clenched his fists. They were still watching. Still waiting. But this time, they would have to come down from their perches. "Hold positions. Shields up," he barked. More shots. More bodies crumpled to the ground. The coalition soldiers huddled closer, their energy barriers flickering as they absorbed impact after impact. The humans weren't trying to kill them all. They were thinning them out, testing their defenses, waiting. Zelvor's fingers tightened around his weapon. "Let them come," he murmured. Then the transport ships arrived. The sleek, dark hulls hovered just above the ruins, engines scorching the rubble beneath them. The ramps extended, and under heavy guard, the captives were marched out, civilians, bound and restrained, their faces hollow with fear. Zelvor stepped forward, raising his voice. "Enough hiding, humans. You wanted a war? Face us." Silence stretched over the battlefield. Then Cade's voice came, cold and steady. "You just made a mistake, Commander." Zelvor sneered. "And what mistake is that? You think you've forced our hand." He barked a laugh. "Haven't I? You've made yourself predictable." Then the real attack began. The first explosion ripped through the closest transport, sending flames and shrapnel spiraling into the sky. The force of the blast sent Zelvor staggering back, his soldiers thrown to the ground by the shockwave. The second explosion followed a heartbeat later, engulfing another ship in a fireball of debris. The hostages were gone. Zelvor's mind reeled. No. Then came the gunfire. Not from above. From all around. Figures emerged from the dust and smoke, silent, disciplined, ghosts clad in matte black. The human snipers had left their perches. They moved in coordinated precision, cutting through the staggered ranks of the coalition with ruthless efficiency. Suppressed fire rattled through the ruins, the muted cracks of rifle rounds finding their marks with terrifying accuracy. Zelvor raised his weapon, barely getting a shot off before a round clipped his shoulder. Pain seared through him, sending him stumbling. Around him, his forces collapsed, the once mighty coalition reduced to a scrambling, broken unit. The battle had never been in their favor. The humans had known. This wasn't an ambush. It was a massacre. Zelvor gritted his teeth, forcing himself upright. His soldiers were either dead or dying. The remaining few fired blindly into the dust, but they might as well have been shooting into the void. The enemy was everywhere. Then Cade appeared. She emerged from the smoke like a phantom, rifle raised but not aimed. She didn't need to. The fight was over. Zelvor lifted his weapon, his claws shaking, but Cade was faster. A single shot rang out, and pain exploded in his leg as the bullet shattered his knee. He crashed onto the rubble, his vision swimming. Cade stopped in front of him, tilting her head. "You thought the hostages were leverage." Zelvor gritted his teeth, pressing a hand to his wound. They were never here." Cade's voice was calm. "Your transport never made it back to base." Realization sank in like ice. She crouched beside him, close enough that he could see his own reflection in her visor. "You were outplayed the moment you set foot on this planet." Zelvor's breath came in ragged gasps. The pain in his leg was nothing compared to the burning humiliation in his chest. He had underestimated them. He had been played. And now, it was over. Cade rose to her feet, rifle lowering. "Your war ends here, Commander." The last thing Zelvor saw before the world faded to black was the barrel of her rifle tilting downward. The room smelled of metal, blood, and sterilized air. Dim white light bathed the chamber in a cold glow, casting sharp-edged shadows along the walls. Zelvor was shackled to a reinforced steel chair at the center of it, his reptilian arms bound tight, his legs still wrapped in crude bandages that did little to dull the pain. The humans had ensured he wouldn't bleed out, not out of kindness, but because they weren't done with him yet. He lifted his head, his amber eyes burning with residual fury. Across the room, behind a simple metal table, stood Cade. She had removed her helmet, revealing sharp, angular features and dark eyes that betrayed nothing. Her posture was relaxed, but Zelvor wasn't fooled. There was nothing casual about this meeting. "Where are my soldiers?" he rasped. His throat was dry, his voice hoarse from lack of water. Cade didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into a pouch at her side, retrieving a small, smooth device. She set it on the table between them and tapped it once. A holographic display flickered to life, casting pale blue light across her face. Footage played. Zelvor's stomach twisted. His forces, what remained of them, were kneeling in the dirt. Their weapons had been stripped away, their armor dented and scorched. Some clutched injuries, others merely stared at the ground, their expressions hollow. Around them stood human soldiers, rifles trained with mechanical precision. Not a single unnecessary movement. No sign of cruelty. No gloating. "They're alive," Cade said finally, her voice even. "For now." Zelvor's jaw clenched. "Then kill us and be done with it." Cade tilted her head slightly. "That's what you would do, isn't it?" His silence was answer enough. She leaned forward, folding her arms on the table. "You came to this planet thinking you were invincible, that our weapons were primitive, that our tactics were crude." She gestured to the footage. "And now you're here. Broken. Captured." Zelvor forced himself to maintain eye contact, even as shame curled around his ribs like a vice. "Your kind has only won a single battle. The coalition is vast. Our fleets will come. And when they do, they will reduce this world to ash." Cade exhaled, a slow, measured breath. Then she leaned back and switched the footage. New images filled the space between them. Coalition warships burning in orbit. Crippled fleets drifting lifelessly through the void, their shattered hulls reflecting distant starlight. Ground forces overwhelmed, their lines collapsing as human resistance fighters swarmed their positions. It wasn't just this planet. It was everywhere. Zelvor felt something he had never felt before. A sinking, gut-wrenching realization. Cade studied him. "Your people made a mistake when they underestimated us." He tore his gaze away from the display. "We are stronger." Cade shook her head. "Strength isn't just numbers. It's not just advanced technology. It's adaptability. It's resilience." She gestured toward him. "You thought we were weak because we didn't fight like you. But that's exactly why you lost." Zelvor's claws dug into his bindings. "The coalition does not surrender." Cade regarded him with something almost like pity. "Then it will fall." She tapped the device again, shutting off the display. The room felt colder without the soft glow of the hologram. "Your people will have a choice," she said. "They can keep fighting a war they've already lost. Or they can walk away." Zelvor bared his teeth. "And if they refuse?" Cade's voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of certainty. "Then we will end them." The words settled between them like the final toll of a funeral bell. Zelvor had no response. He could see it in her eyes. This wasn't arrogance. It wasn't a threat. It was simply truth. The war was over. The only question that remained was whether the coalition would accept it.